Well, hey, D. Scott here. We are live on Amazon with Pat Daly, and as part of the author interview series, we're excited to talk to him about his book. Came out earlier this year, Spark, and I just want to start. I just want to go right into Pat, having you introduce yourself, and we'll talk a little bit about the journey for the book and the story without giving too much away. I
Sure.
definitely let people click on it. It is in the carousel, highlighted in the carousel. Uh, Click on it, take a peek. But Pat, welcome to the show here on Amazon Live. Great to see you.
Hey, great to be here. Really appreciate setting aside some time to talk to me, and look forward to chatting more about the book and how I got there.
And just briefly in the green room beforehand, we were talking about you were in the Air Force, and
I was.
I notice you've got a fighter model in the back there.
Yeah,
Uh, Tell us a little bit about your background, and thank you for your service.
sure. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for yours. I grew up in Seattle, and then went to the Air Force Academy, graduated from there, went off to fly fighters, flew F4s in the Philippines and California for a number of years. And then I went to test pilot school, and I worked as a test pilot for, I guess, about another 4 or 5 years. And then went to work for the airlines, quickly discovered that was not the place for me, and then jumped ship from there. Actually had a little help from American Airlines on jumping ship because they decided they had too many pilots. So, actually turned out to be the best possible thing for me. And then I went to work for Honeywell down at Johnson Space Center, and working guidance, navigation, control, management stuff on space shuttle, space station kind of projects. Along the way, I met another guy that we had similar interests. We launched a company and did that for a number of years. And about 3 years ago, I sold that off and have been concentrating on writing, and that's been so much fun, so much more fun than I thought it would be.
Oh, that's great. I love the journey, and I'll just say that's kind of the American dream. There is to start a business, build it up, and sell it. That's why people watch Shark Tank every week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did that go? Tell us a little bit about the business and how
Well,
you made that exit.
we were in the aviation consulting business, mostly safety, human factors kind of stuff. Small company. We had 4 owners, but a lot of customers. And so I got the chance to travel really all over the world, China, Singapore, Italy, other places in Europe, a lot of stuff in the US, and do a lot of teaching, a lot of consulting. And then a few years ago, I guess it was about 5 years ago, maybe, I got to the point where I found that while I still liked the work, I was having kind of the same disagreements with my partners routinely, and eventually got to the point that I realized that this is fundamental. It's I'm never going to convince them. They're never going to convince me. And maybe it's just time to cash in my chips and go on my way. And I probably took a bit of a loss doing it, but a huge gain in happiness and peace in my soul. So it was worth
Well,
doing.
there's a friend of mine that talks about running his business and coming home with a pocket full of money to a house full of strangers. So there's definitely
Yeah.
more to the business than just the financial rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so true. And I was lucky enough to get to work out of my house for many of those years. Um, but part of working out of your house, and everybody's kind of discovered this through COVID, is that
Mhm.
if you work from home, you're always at work. And so you'd find yourself, or I would find myself anyway, checking email 9, 10 o'clock at night. And that's just a path to burnout.
Yeah, that's, I'm coming up on my 9th year of working out of the house. And so in a lot of ways, COVID just made my life more efficient because now everybody knows about Zoom and video conferencing. I
Yeah.
didn't have to teach them, but it is a challenge. You do have to be able to set up those boundaries and decide when you're done and walk away from it, and then have the discipline to not come back.
Yep.
So I just want to go back to your days as a pilot. So I was also in the Air Force, and one of the things I always said is that in the Air Force we figure out how to get the officers to go fight. Good luck, sir. As you send them down the runway. And I was also over in Korea where we had the F4 Phantoms, and those are fun jets. And then watching those guys take off. We also had a U-2 there, so that was an amazing plane, that spy plane.
Yeah.
But then those F-15s came in for Team Spirit.
Yeah.
And of course, it's just a big time to show off. And so those guys had launched those F-15s and then go straight up in the air, straight vertical, and accelerate while they're doing it. It's some impressive plane. But I'm just thinking, how do you make that transition from the adrenaline that you would get is being a pilot like that, and as a test pilot? I can't imagine what that's like, and then stepping into the commercial airline world.
Yeah, it was a little tougher than I imagined, because I'd had a bunch of friends that had gone off to work for the airlines, and it was all, oh, we get so much time off, and the hardest part of my job is doing the yard work, and so I thought, well, I might be okay with that. And I found out that wasn't exactly true. That I really did miss. The biggest thing I missed was the camaraderie, the sense of team, the sense of mission that you get in the Air Force, and missed it a lot when I left, because if you're flying for say American Airlines, you show up, you meet guys that you're going to fly with when you're walking onto the airplane. You fly with them for 3 days, so you tell all the same stories every week or so to a new group of guys, and then you may never see them ever again.
Wow.
And so it just felt it was a tougher transition, and I was not all that heartbroken when American decided to furlough me, and it was time to look for something else.
And I'm just thinking, there's that transition. Of course, you went through your own business, and we just briefly talked about that. But of course, here we are at Amazon Live. We're talking with author Pat Daly about his book. Came out this year, Spark. Click on it. You can peek inside and start reading it. I tell you, I guarantee you're going to get drawn into the story. It's highlighted there in the carousel. Pat, you went from the high adrenaline, the camaraderie there in the Air Force, into American. You went into your own business, but now writing at home.
Yeah.
So camaraderie, a little different.
Little different.
Tell us about your writing journey here.
I've always been a reader. I love to read, and it's part of every day for me. If nothing else, before I go to sleep at night, I pick up a book and I read. And sometimes, depending on how tired I am, I may read for 3 minutes. Sometimes I may read for an hour. And I always had kind of this feeling that, man, I'd like to do that. I'd like to write. I'd like to, I always have these crazy ideas, and I would love to put some of them down on paper. And, I've started and stopped a number of novels over the years. And then I just dove completely into this one and just wrote pretty much every day. And I found that the story was taking shape and making progress. And then, frankly, the first draft was absolutely horrid. Just, I had a really good friend of mine read. He was kind of my beta reader. He might even have been the alpha reader. And I still have some of his critiques because he wanted hard pages to read. And so I'd send him a batch at a time. And I ended up getting one batch back from him, and he'd written all over it. And he's harassing me about punctuation and grammar. And then he ends it up with, "My God, do you even speak English?" So it's like a little tough love there, but that's the kind of friendship we have. And he made the point, and I ended up, I think, going through 8 drafts before the final published version.
Wow. I was noticing we got a comment from Joshua here. Says, "Hey everyone, Pat, I love your book. Can't wait for something like this to become reality." LOL. So we'll get into a little bit more about the story and kind of tease that with some of the folks there. It's so that part of that, I think, why people don't want to continue with their books that they've started, like you did, is you are putting yourself out there, right? Like, like in Back to the Future, it's just like I just couldn't take that kind of rejection.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay, plenty of mistakes along the path. One of which was I had this idea for the book, and so I'm out at dinner on a Friday night in Houston, and we're sitting at dinner, just my wife and I say, "Hey, I got this idea." And so I start kind of pitching her the story idea, and she immediately goes into okay, well, what about this and this and this and this? And I did not react well, apparently. So at the end of dinner, we decided that we still loved each other, but she was not going to read the book until it was published. So I lost a potential early reader through my own misbehavior.
It's there's always a challenge, right? My wife does editing for me, and I always have to get myself mentally prepared. Realize it's all in love, and it's here to help, and it's going to be better.
Yeah.
So then you go through part of it that I like to learn about is how did you create the story? So you've got this concept for Spark, and we've talked with other authors about how some of these authors, like Isaac Asimov, said, "I know the beginning and the end, and then I just write to kind of bridge those two." So what's your process? How did you go about? You had a concept, but how did you end up going about that first draft and so forth?
Yeah, I had the concept, and so I spent a little bit of time writing an outline, and it was not much of an outline. It was about a page and a half, and that became the bottom of the manuscript. So the more I wrote, it kept moving down, so I could refer to it if I needed to remember where the heck I was going, because sometimes your characters don't do what you think they're going to do. And the more you try to put agency in it and have them really behave as they would behave if they were a real person with a real motivation, you realize that you're just having them do stuff just to advance the story. And so then you have to get back and thrash through it again. And I would say maybe the framework of the book is the way I imagined it in terms of where it mostly takes place in Spark, the Solar Prime augmented reality park.
Right.
And yet so much of the rest of it is completely different from what I anticipated.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is. And a lot of that is thanks to to people that read it, and wonderful developmental editor, Steph Mathiasen. She just really helped me flesh out some of the characters and some of the direction that it was going. So, yeah, I certainly know Asimov, but I had a little more of an outline, and I tried to write to that. But then I would find myself in a place where I was so far off the outline that I had to do either an adjustment to the outline or adjustment to the book itself to bring it back under control.
Yeah. And when you first started writing this, what did you intend to self-publish? Did you have a publisher? What was your kind of the way you wanted to get this to the public?
I had always envisioned this is going to be so good. This book is going to be so stinking good that the big publishing houses are going to queue outside my front door and get into a little bidding war with each other to buy the right to publish my book. That doesn't happen often. And I think the last data I saw on this is about 2,500 new books are published every day.
Oh my gosh, 2,500 every day. All right.
Yeah. And so it's okay. They've got a whole lot of people vying for their attention. And at the same time, the barriers to publication are going down. It is really easy to self-publish a book now, but I didn't really want to go that way, and because I've read some self-published stuff, and I look at it and I said, "Ooh, they probably needed another couple of drafts, or they needed somebody to give them the good harsh feedback." And so I was worried about that. So I got I don't know if it's even up on my shelf behind me now. It's over there. Publishing 101. It's a good book about publishing, and then Guide to Literary Agents, which is updated every year. And so I started checking out all the literary agents that I thought would be interested in my kind of work, and started writing them letters, sending them pages, and eventually it did this big kind of global circle, and I ended up talking to Fern Brady at Inklings Publishing, and they're a small press, and I actually met her through a writing group. We were both members of the Houston Writers Guild, and so
Fern has been on the program here with me.
Yes. Yeah, her book came out, United Vidden, I think, came out this year, and she's published before in short stories and stuff. Great book. And I was getting downhearted. You know, I was getting a lot of rejection letters from agents, and then Fern emailed me and she said, "Hey, have you sold your book yet?" I said, No, I haven't. She goes, "You want to sell it to me?" Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I do. And so Inklings took on the project. She assigned me a developmental editor. And I can't, for me anyway, I can't emphasize enough how important that was for my book, for my project. The having people that are professionals look at what you're trying to create. You know, they understand your vision, they understand where you're trying to go with it, and they are just very, very helpful about giving you the tough love and helping you guide your way, or they help guide you through the whole process. And it's so I don't think I'm a good enough writer to self-publish, but I think I'm a good enough writer to take good criticism and get better. So that's why I think presses like Inklings are so valuable to everybody.
Yeah, the collaboration you always end up with something better. And
Yeah.
I can think back to your days as an Air Force pilot. Obviously, you're very skilled at the plane and all of the things that it takes to fly the plane, but from the cockpit. But you had a whole crew, of
Yeah.
course, that's there, and you've got people in the tower, and there's a lot of support that goes, and they're all very good at what they do,
They are.
and that allows you to be successful as a pilot.
Yep.
But everyone calls out the pilot or calls out the author.
Yeah. Yeah. And lately I've been binging Formula One on Netflix. And it's kind of the same story. You get
Mm.
the race drivers and they get all the press, but it's what they do is such a small part of the overall effort
Mhm.
to get that car on the track and make it a successful car for somebody to drive. So absolutely, you're right. Without the collaboration, without the other people that are doing their work really well, I might have given up.
And being able to pull people in and take criticism, and it's not personal again, right? It's just
Yeah.
they want you to be better. So putting out those early drafts, getting some feedback, and then but being willing to do that. I mean, you're really opening yourself up to be able to do that. And then it's not just your friends and family, because of course, your mother is always going to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
Pat's book is that's the one I love," right? But then to go to this, I will say, disinterested third party, right? Who's
Yep.
saying, "Yeah, this is what I do. I look at it this way." You're really opening yourself up.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always that fear.
Hmm.
The fear of reading the comments, reading the critiques, reading, somebody coming up to you at a Comic-Con or something saying, "Oh, you're the guy that wrote this piece of trash?" Yeah. Stop writing now. The world doesn't need any more of this.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. That goes
yeah.
back to the Frank and Ernest comic where they're talking to the big movie mogul, and he says to him, "Did you see my last picture?" And Frank and Ernest say, "We hope so." So anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So and let's talk about that a little bit, because I think the other thing that people wonder about or think about is that, oh great, I sold my book, Inkling's going to do this, Fern's helping me out, I've got my editors, um, cover design, all that stuff. But what about promotion? Because a lot of it still comes back to Pat to do
Yeah.
things like this, be here on Amazon Live, and I'll remind people the book is in the carousel. Click it. Just go ahead and add to cart. You'll be happy. All
Yeah.
right. So promotion.
Yeah. Promotion is, I guess I didn't really anticipate how hard that would
Hmm.
be. Um, because I don't think I'm a salesperson by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so writing blurbs for the book or even going to Inklings is great about getting tables at local conventions and events and then it's okay, authors, get your little fannies out here
Mm-hmm.
and hawk your book. And it's so you stand there frozen for a
Mm.
while in front of this big stack of books. And finally, you realize if I don't do something, everybody's just going to keep streaming past. And so I tried making eye contact with people and then picking up my book and handing it to them and saying, this is the perfect book for you. Or one of the best reviews I got on Amazon was from a woman that I sold a book to at a convention, at a
Hmm.
Comic-Con in Baytown, Texas. And
Okay.
she was wearing a T-shirt that Shel Silverstein wrote a book called Where the Sidewalk Ends. And her T-shirt was kind of an adaptation of that in terms of the graphics. And the word said, "Where the side quest ends." And so I said, if you're wearing that shirt, then you need to buy this book. And she goes, "Oh, really?" Yeah. And so
we go together.
we started a conversation, and she bought the book and then wrote a phenomenal review for me. But the promotion is tough.
Joshua makes a comment here. It's so hard to sell yourself, let alone a book that you wrote and put your heart into it.
Yeah. It is tough. And I vacillate back and forth at times saying, oh, what kind of book do you like? Well, then try this one or this one. And then eventually I bring them back to my book, and they go, well, what else has he written? Well, nothing. And then sometimes they'll go, did you write this book? Well, yes, I did. And sometimes that's oh, great. Would you sign it for me? Well, yeah, absolutely. Or it's, okay.
Yeah.
But it's, like Joshua says, it can be tough to put yourself out there for that sometimes instant feedback.
Yeah. Trade shows are an interesting thing. I personally love trade shows. I love going to them, and I love exhibiting at them, but not everybody has that desire. And of course, COVID has made it much more challenging, but at least things are opening up and we're getting a little more face to face. But being able to stand out among those crowds, I would imagine it's challenging, because you probably have some of the big publishing houses that build some pretty impressive displays, and they put people in costumes and build sets around the stories.
Yeah, and then you got the Patrick Stewart's over here signing autographs, or someone else, and people get drawn to that. Yeah, so it's competition for attention.
And so, which type of conferences? Because Joshua here, he'd ask, does Comic Cons going? How does it go for you in terms of selling your book? But I'm just thinking, there's different types of conferences as well. So Comic Con is one very specific type, which might be well for your book. But what about trade shows in general, and how did Comic Con go?
Comic Con went stunningly well for me.
Nice.
I had no idea how it was going to work out, but I ended up selling a ton of books.
Yeah.
To the point that we sold out all of Inkling's stock on hand.
Okay.
And
that's good and bad.
Yeah, good and bad. So it's like, well, I guess I don't need to come back tomorrow, because what am I going to sell? And I help sell the other books. That's all great. Little cross promotion stuff is helpful. But that kind of queued us up for the next event. That, okay, maybe it turns out that Pat doesn't really suck as a salesman, at least of his own stuff. So so let's get a little more on hand and try to sell them. Interesting observation from Comic-Con is that there are people that put a ton of time and effort into cosplay and developing their costumes, and that is great, but they don't buy books. They're there for the cosplay. They're not there to lug around a bag of books that they
it doesn't match their outfit, does it?
Yeah. So I found that to be interesting, and maybe the next few cons will prove that different. Other trade shows, I know that Inklings has some on the docket, but I've only gone to comic and science fiction conventions so far.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the book. So you were over in Korea. I was also in Korea in the Air Force, and but your story starts, well, So the beautiful thing about writing a book like this is you get to create the universe
Uh-huh.
that your characters occupy. But we start in a dream in a bedroom,
Yeah.
and a child that I will say is in distress.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I originally wrote the book, I wrote it linearly in terms of time. I wrote it as things happened, and then working with Steph and Fern, came to the conclusion that that's not really where the story started. And so rearranged the book, rearranged some stuff, and you jump into the to the story. Yeah, it's in a young man's bedroom. He's in foster care, and he's having a nightmare, and it's a recurring nightmare that he has struggled with for the past several years. And he's in foster care because both his parents passed away. His father dies in Korea in what in the book I refer to as Korea 2, the second Korean War. Although you and I both know that the first one never really ended.
Yeah, they signed an
just
armistice, so just a ceasefire, but technically the war is still intact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I tried to create a universe that supported this kid having these problems that landed him in foster care, and then I needed an initiating event to get him out of foster care, and so his I don't want to give away too much about why he ends up
we'll let
fleeing
people take a look
care.
in the book. You can kind of get a little read a little bit there. But part of the thing I'll say about science fiction, fiction in general, you get to create your universe. Science fiction, we get to explore different societal elements.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, you start off with foster care, and foster care is one of those issues in the United States that we're trying to deal with. And so just kind of keying on that for a moment, there's this child, he has this nightmare, it's a recurring nightmare. And because of that, there's complications in his foster care that happens up because he's like so many kids that go into foster care, they're creating some sort of defense for themselves. And it may be an emotional defense, or it might be a physical defense. And I'll just say that's part of what got him into trouble is some physical defense.
Yeah.
Although he's not acting out, he's just trying to protect himself.
Yep. Yeah, and gets misinterpreted. His actions are misunderstood, and it's
which is just a great coming of age story anyway, right? I mean, every teenager is misunderstood.
Yep.
Going back to Wizard of Oz, right? Where you wanted to, they don't understand you at home. You want to see big oceans, big mountains, right? Big rivers, big cities, and all that. So, yeah. So he's misunderstood, and
he's misunderstood, and he runs. So he flees foster care, and then he ends up with a strong memory of when he was younger, and that is of being happy at Spark because his parents took him there when he was younger, and so he decides that's where I'm going. I'm going to run away. I'm going to run away to this theme park. And what kid would not want to live in a theme park?
Absolutely.
And so that's his goal. He originally thinks he's going to be able to work there, get a job there. And it turns out that nobody really wants to hire a 16-year-old runaway.
And I'll say that there's that moment too where this is really the first glimpse that something is different in this universe that you're creating, right? That at first it's just a house, a neighborhood, a town, and then you get that first mention that something is different, and it comes down to the location of where Spark is.
Yeah. And this is certainly not a spoiler. And the genesis for this whole location was back in the Air Force. I was stationed at both Edwards Air Force Base and George Air Force Base, and those are in the Mojave Desert in California. And there were some solar power projects that were built between those bases and Barstow, and they were called Solar 1, Solar 2, and then the original title of the book was Solar Prime, because this was going to be based and built up around this solar power plant. But those kind of solar power plants have some downside. And the downside is they're all mirror based. And so they're reflecting the sunlight up on this canister that contains molten salts. And then you run it through a heat exchanger and a turbine and boom, electricity. But that reflected sunlight is lethal to birds. And if they fly through that concentrated sunlight, it's right. Science fiction in real life. They're nearly vaporized. So I wanted to change that dynamic.
And just to give people an idea, anyone that's taken a magnifying glass out in the sun and tried to, maybe you focus that sunlight and you'll start burning stuff.
Yeah.
And so this is what's happening. This is what you're talking about, but it's through mirrors instead of it's reflected light instead of refracted light.
Yeah. And I didn't like that. And, working in the space program, we have much better ways to convert the EM spectrum into energy than just reflecting the light. And it's, the absorbent panels, the panels you see on the space station and satellites, but they're horribly, horribly inefficient. And I thought, well, what if you could make them more efficient? And so that became the genesis for what I call black grass, which is little tiny blades of this highly absorbent material that then you can convert to directly to electricity. And that's the whole power and money engine behind the theme park.
Yeah.
Because the guy that created this black grass always loved games, always loved stories and imagination and theme park. And so now he's got the money to create a cutting edge theme park. And it's an augmented reality theme park. And so just a quick word on what the difference is between virtual and augmented reality. Pokemon Go is augmented reality.
Right.
When you play the game, you see the real world, and then you got Pikachu superimposed on it. So that was the vision for Solar Prime Augmented Reality Park, was that people would wear these goggles, and it would superimpose the virtual over real. And that allows them to play on a much bigger stage than virtual reality, because virtual reality takes away all of the confines of the actual world. Whereas augmented reality, you can still, if you see a wall, you're going to know intuitively to avoid running into that wall.
Right.
And so that's the benefit. And Spark is a Disney World sized theme park where we learn that not everything is as it seems.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about the journey too, from that bedroom to Spark is, and you talked about this camaraderie, right? When you're in some sort of I'll say any kind of a dire circumstance or anytime there's some hardship, uh, bonds can be formed pretty quickly.
Yeah,
And I think this happens along the way too.
it does.
Between that bedroom and Spark, there's some camaraderie that I can feel your experience being poured into that as well.
Yeah. On this journey, Will makes pretty good friends. Well, he's got a neighbor that he's friendly with, but then also he hits some pretty bad circumstances on the road to Spark and has some unfortunate things happen to him. But he's there's a racism theme that flows through this, in that like after or during World War II, Japanese were discriminated against. Japanese in America,
Mm-hmm.
American citizens of
Right.
Japanese descent were discriminated against purely because of their ethnicity. And so I postulated that after Korea II, which ended up being a pretty horrific war,
Mm-hmm.
Koreans could suffer the same kind of discrimination. And Will
Mm-hmm.
he's Korean American, Korean father, American mother, and that sets him up to battle some wars of different scale along the way. And he ends up being befriended by a gentleman that was a soldier
Mm-hmm.
in Korea too. And you would think that if anybody had a right to be prejudiced against Koreans, it would be someone who fought against
Mm-hmm.
Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that he destroys that whole stereotype and helps Will on his way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's having lived the life that I have and met people that I have, people that have gone through these types of events, whether it's Afghanistan, recent wars, or going back through um, Vietnam and Korea and back. People who go through those types of things often, of course, we have the post-traumatic stress conditions, but also some people embrace a very deep appreciation of life.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I wanted to show through Will's interaction with some of the characters in the book, is that he runs into people that have had bad things happen to them
Mm-hmm.
and lived through very difficult, dangerous circumstances, and yet emerge on the other side still embracing that life and still embracing the potential that exists out
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's it. That's an important part that comes through, is that it's not always leading into some sort of antisocial type behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so Spark is kind of this, it's Will hopes that this is a place for him, that he finds a home that he hasn't found because of his circumstances that placed him into the foster care system,
Mm-hmm.
making that journey.
Yeah.
And then what's his experience?
Well, he's got some money that his parents left to him, and he finds out quickly that he's not employable as far as Spark is concerned, and
Mhm.
since he's a runaway, he's not really employable in most circumstances. He can work day jobs and whatnot, but nobody really wants to hire somebody that's on the run. So he pays his admission into Spark, and at first he thinks he tries to manage his own expectations that this is going to suck. This was good for kids, but I'm older now, I'm smarter, it's not going to be that good. And he enters it, and the child within emerges again, and you realize that this really is a wonderful place, a potentially wonderful place. And so he starts exploring. He has a one very unfortunate encounter with the female protagonist in the book, whose avatar name is Feral Daughter, and they have a run-in, and it's the boy meet girl scene, and they end up butting heads pretty significantly. But there is a love interest that develops between them as we progress through the book.
Yeah, not your typical Hallmark movie there.
Nope, not going to be seen on Lifetime for Christmas.
Yeah, this again, this is that coming to age. So here we are. We've got Pat Daly here on Amazon Live. We're talking about his book, Spark. It's in the carousel. Came out earlier this year. Big hit at Comic-Con. And so you'll definitely want to it's Christmas time coming up. It's holiday season, gift giving time. Books make wonderful gifts. So click on it, take a look, buy copies, have it sent directly to somebody that you want to give a gift to. And there's no need to stand in line to stay up all night to get involved with the whole Black Friday scene. We make it easy right here on Amazon. Just click and add to cart. So I love this. Oh, I love Joshua's comment. Says sounds like the perfect gift for the gamer in your family. So is this a gamer book, or
yes and no?
Who would read this one?
I think that if you're a gamer, if you're a fan of Ready Player One, if you're a fan of Ender's Game, you're probably going to like this book. I targeted it to be, I wanted something that my kids and grandkids could read without me being too embarrassed about the steamy scenes. And so I wrote it at a YA level. So it's family friendly. Good romance, I think, but and some good tension, but family friendly anyway. And I think if you're a science fiction fan, if you want to explore some of the themes of where artificial intelligence, I think, really may be going, because there's the evil AI trope is all over science fiction, and
absolutely.
I think that's not necessarily the way it needs to be. Not every AI is going to be Skynet. So, yeah.
David made the comment here. It says Ready Player One meets Jurassic Park. So that's his description of your book.
Yeah, I like that. Because there is we do spend a lot of time in one of the quests that happens right on the chronologically. It happens in history right at the end of the dinosaur era, when theoretically the meteorite slams into the Yucatan Peninsula and disrupts the ecosystem. So that's the background for one of it. But yeah, it's got some of that vibe too.
So it kind of again, you've created this whole universe. We've got this great story, and I don't want to go too much more into it because I really want people to buy the book and just enjoy that, whether you read it on a digital platform or you get the physical copy. It's the story that's important. So read the story and share it with your friends. It is a great time. I think that gamers might equate like some of this, but I think just some of the story in itself is enough. It's that human connection that people can put themselves into Will or into the other characters and kind of understand the emotions that they're feeling. And so we can talk a little bit about that, about how do you convey emotions through the black and white text?
Oh, that's tough. And I think the best luck I've had
Mm.
is by showing the actions associated with the emotions and some of the dynamics that happen between male and female in terms of pursuit and challenge and rejection and misunderstanding what somebody means. Because when you're 16, it is really hard to put yourself out emotionally and tell somebody that you really care for them and that you're attracted to them. And because we're worried about getting rejected and slapped, and
which is what we talked about when you were writing the book. So
yeah.
as I tell my son, I'm still a 16-year-old boy. I've just added more layers.
Yeah. I like that. I may have to steal that. Yeah. It's we grow up, or at least we get older, but we don't necessarily grow up.
Yeah.
I've throughout my life, I've suffered a little bit from imposter syndrome, in that I'd find myself doing something really cool or amazing to me, and I always expected that somewhere along the line somebody was going to kick the door open and say, "Daly, what are you doing in here? Get out of here! You don't belong here." So it's I think we can all identify with that at least a little bit.
I think everyone, even though you're so accomplished, everyone that there's always that moment when you think, but how do I compare?
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that as a teenager, right, we're always comparing with peers. We want to be individual, but we don't want to stand out too much.
Yep. And I think also we, at that age in particular, and I think even throughout life now, we misjudge others' happiness. And we see their Insta feed and we think everything is unicorns and butterflies, and really it's not. That picture is 1 second out of an entire day, and the rest of the day may have been a 23-hour 59-minute miserable slog through life. But nobody posts that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's the varnished truth, right, that comes out through social media. And but I just think again, just kind of talk about those emotions. So you're talking about just kind of showing those circumstances. Some of us remember what it's like to be 16, and Joshua says 16 is a rough age. I think there are a lot of things that are going on, right? You as a 16-year-old, and we see this in Will's life, other people are making decisions for you, although you feel like you know what's best for you. Maybe.
Yeah. And you don't always agree with the decisions they're making for you. And you have the choice, like Will had. Am I going to put up with their decisions when I think it is not in my own best interest, or am I going to do something about it? And we all face that.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about this universe that you've created, because so we have Will, we've got the journey. We get we'll talk. It's the hero's journey, right? So people read the book, find out what happens with Will, find out what happens with feral daughter, right?
Yeah.
And so read the book. It's in the carousel. Click on it. Add to cart. Buy it on Kindle. You can start reading it right away. Get a hard copy sent to yourself or to a friend. It's a great idea. So, what are your plans for this universe?
Well, in Spark, I introduce a thing I call SCAS, which is an acronym for the Southern California Autonomous Zone. And I just remember I remember the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in the Seattle area, which later became the Capitol Hill Organized Protest. And essentially it was a small area that was seceding from the world. And we were all, everybody was going to be on their own, and it was going to be the summer of love. And turns out that wasn't necessarily true. And yet I understand the desire, let me just pull in, let me just shut everybody else out, and just us, just us, we're going to be fine. And so one of the things in this universe is that large chunk of Southern California has seceded from the world. And that's only talked about peripherally in Spark, but it plays a much bigger part of book 2, which is tentatively going to be called Fire.
Okay.
And
I think that's what, this is what people wanted to know, right?
Yeah.
Is that, will there be a sequel? Will there be a follow-up? And because, that first moment when we read and we find out about this autonomous zone, that's when you first get that idea that, wait a minute, this isn't the world that I see, that I hear about.
Yeah.
Right? There's something new, and you've created that. And so now book 2, I know, I'm just saying right here, Joshua says, oh my, I can't wait. I didn't know book 2 was happening. I'm so excited now. So
yes,
Spark has lit the fire. You're
yep.
So tell us a little bit about Fire, because I know people want to know what's coming up.
Okay. Fire takes place, it actually starts just prior to the end of Spark. So you pick up a different perspective, a different point of view, and you get a little bit of a look into behind the scenes of not just Spark itself, but also the instigating events that happen at Spark that result in the big finale. And so now you get to see how that looked from a different angle. And then I use that to try to pull together a little bit more of what's going on in SCAS and the world as a whole, while still wrapping things in at Spark. Because one of the things that I guess kind of surprised me was I wrote these sections that took place in the quests. And so you're reading a book about people playing a game, and you think, how much fun is that? It's like watching a movie about people watching a movie. And yet those turned out to be some of the sections that people remembered the most and enjoyed the most.
Wonderful.
And so I thought, okay, I wasn't going to do any of that in Fire, but now I'm in the midst of writing, another kind of quest sequence that takes place.
Well, I think this is going to be great, and I'm glad to hear that you've got the next book coming out. As we wind down here, Pat, thank you for taking time and joining me here on Amazon Live and sharing about Spark. It is in the carousel. Anyone that's watching, and whether you're watching in replay, click the book, add to cart. You're going to be happy. Send it to friends. You'll be the hero. So, Pat, thank you for taking time and sharing about Spark and about the sequel that's coming up. And I just want to give you a chance to talk about how people can get a hold of you if they want to find out maybe which con you're going to be at next. Get a signed copy, get your book signed by Pat, or maybe have you come and speak to one of the events.
Yeah. I'm always happy to do that. Inklings Publishing has the calendar of events. But for me personally, if you want to reach out to me, my blog is feraldaughters.wordpress.com. And so you can reach me. Yeah. So you can reach me there. You can reach me at Pat Daly Author on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, although honestly, I do not tweet very much. And
well, there you go.
Yeah. So really, my blog or Facebook probably the best ways to get me.
Okay, well, that's great. And Kelly Van Horn says, "Love the blog name." So it's very good. In Fire, Smoke, Ashes, it's a series. So David Van Horn is also supporting you. You've got some good fans that have been here today, supporting you here on Amazon as we talked about your book. Hang on, I'm going to send you into the green room, and then we'll be right back.
All right. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Hey, we have been talking with Pat Daly, author of Spark. It is in the carousel. Again, books are a great gift. And maybe you want to gift yourself. So take advantage of that. But with that, I am going to sign off. This is D. Scott Smith here on Amazon Live. Everyone have a fabulous day.